If there's one thing I miss about cartoons from the 90s and early 2000s, it's compilation shows. In my mind, two reign supreme. Cartoon Network's Cartoon Fridays, which ran from 1999 to 2003, and was a vessel for testing pilot episodes of new cartoons, giving us premieres of shows that would go on to become Cartoon Network classics, such as Courage the Cowardly Dog and codenamed Kids Next Door. On the Nickelodeon side, we had a different kind of compilation show called Kablam. This particular show played a series of cartoon shorts, but instead of new ones every week, it would play new episodes of the same shorts. And there were some memorable staples. The offbeats were one of the best, following the activities of different groups of kids, with each one of them having their own specific quirks. It's the closest cartoon I've seen to capturing the spirit of Charlie Brown. Action League Now was another favorite. It was like a combination of Toy Story and Mr. Bill. Toys that existed as sentient beings, but were abused just like any other toy. Sniz and Fondue was 2D animated goodness, and Life with Loopy was an eccentric short that should have been a runaway hit. But the one I was always fascinated by was also Kablam's best, Prometheus and Bob. Lasting all 4 years of Kablam's runtime, there are 41-minute-and-a-half segments that observe the recordings of an alien who has arrived on Earth during prehistoric times to teach a caveman various aspects of modern life, ranging from technology to culture and basic life skills. Saying it out loud, it sounds almost too silly of an idea to be executed well. It's an incredibly simple idea, but almost esoteric, due to it being so obvious that you probably shouldn't do it. But then the idea is so genius in its purity of how zealous it is in taking itself seriously, it completely elevates this show to levels of brilliance. I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's go to the show that's ahead of its time and before its time. Let's go 900,000 years into the past and watch the tapes of Prometheus and Bob. Our journey to the beginning of Prometheus and Bob starts with a man named Cody Zellers. Having worked in the animation department for both Eureka's Castle in 1990 and Gullah Gullah Island from 1994 to 1995, while also working on commercials, Zellers made the most of his opportunities with his access to the professional equipment. In an interview with the YouTube channel Cult Popture, which I'll be referencing frequently throughout this video, so I'll put the link in the description below, Zellers states, "I directed a lot of commercials, and we would have leftover sets, and sometimes the equipment would be rented for a day before it had to be returned. So I got into the habit of making short films with whatever was left over. Since I had a prehistoric set left over from a lottery commercial, I came up with the idea of an alien teaching a caveman how to use fire, hence Prometheus, the Greek god that brought fire to man, and Bob, the caveman, uses the fire at the end to cook Prometheus, and the monkey flies the saucer into the camera. So that was kind of the pilot. It was very dark, but the producers of Kablam, they liked it, on the condition I never show that to anyone, and come up with a little bit more friendly version. So I just started writing episodes based on the same concept. The pilot, and eventually the segments, were done as stop-motion animation, similar to that of Wallace and Gromit, or more recently, Coraline. Prometheus and Bob benefited from being animated in this fashion due to the context of Zellers wanting to keep the show realistic. And I quote, "The only rule I gave was no slide whistles. It's not like cartoony reality. We try to keep it as real as possible. I had the rule that nobody was going to reach out a frame and grab an anvil and drop it. They had to obey physics. I stretch physics quite a bit, but it still has to seem like it could really happen." End quote. And this is where Prometheus and Bob's artistic strength lies. Stop motion is able to give a dimension that other animation types just can't offer: tangibility. Stop motion lends the most credibility of a real feeling to its viewers, because your brain is able to sense there's something physically there, while still maintaining the ability to craft cartoon hijinks, the singular limit being what you can physically construct. I think an apt comparison would be practical special effects versus modern day CGI. With CGI, what you can make is practically limitless. The drawback to that, though, is that it hasn't totally gotten to the point where it can be indistinguishable from reality. Even the best graphics are noticeably a few strides away from looking as if they're part of a living, breathing world. Compare that to practical effects, where you can tell you're seeing something that exists in our dimensional plane. You can tell when there's interaction with the subject that even though the prop or effect may not be alive, it still feels like it's a living entity. Our subjects in this case are a cast of 3 main characters: a tall, purple alien named Prometheus, a caveman named Bob, and a mischievous, nameless monkey. The segments are cast as forbidden tapes of Prometheus interacting with Bob, trying to educate him about the world and modern technologies. The lessons Prometheus attempts to teach Bob seem obvious, but quickly take a turn, falling into an "if anything can go wrong, will go wrong," due to a combination of Bob's naivete and the monkey's playful misbehavior. It reminds me of a lesson I had in middle school, where our teacher made us give him directions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He would follow our individual directions, but would take them literally. So if someone said grab the knife, he would grab it by the blade. Not enough to bleed, but it gave us an impression of how important it was to give detailed instructions. And that's part of Prometheus's issue. To you and me, these would be obvious directions. But for someone who has never encountered these inventions, Bob's lack of understanding and curiosity get the better of him. And what should be simple tasks end up being overly complex blunders. And that's what I enjoy most about the episodes in general, is how basic the lessons would snowball wildly out of control. For example, in one episode, Prometheus tries to teach Bob how to build a bridge. He saws down a tree and sets it over a pit, but Bob is too afraid to walk over it and ends up falling into the pit. The rest of the episode is Prometheus attempting to retrieve Bob from the pit, battling both Bob's simple mind and the monkey's playful antics. Zeller notes that, a slapstick like this, it was pretty simple. I would just come up with an idea for like basket weaving or canoeing. Just think of the worst possible thing that could happen, and then work back. End quote. The humor is accentuated by being a silent cartoon. Mostly silent anyway. The only sounds throughout the show are ambient sound effects, and the exclamations from the characters themselves. They make a wide range of noises, and they're all funny by how expressive they are. Bob is fearful of new inventions and ways of life, and cries out constantly. Prometheus is often exasperated by Bob's lack of understanding and groans, and when the monkey angers him, he flies into a rage yelling in his own alien language, which on rare occasions is English. And that begs the question, is he an alien who's been to Earth at a different time period? Maybe he's a human from the future. It kind of asks this bigger question about his existence that expands the Prometheus and Bob universe and makes it fun to ponder over. The screams and shouts come often, incited by pain that they experience, and the reactions to it are certainly the comedic highlights of the series. It's intrinsic to laugh at physical pain, especially when the discomfort causes an immediate reaction that's out of character. Prometheus seems to be somewhat prideful, but when he gets hurt, his pride flies out the window, and he reverts to a rage-filled caveman brain. It's really the entire soul of the show, and lucky for us, we get it in spades. What I found especially unique about this show is the way it's presented. The show is supposed to be the uncovered top-secret tapes of Prometheus and Bob, with Prometheus filming their interactions, controlling a camera with a small remote, making this what I believe to be the first found-footage cartoon. The entire show is shot this way for a specific purpose, according to Zellers. Quote, "The whole point of it was, anybody could watch it. I wanted dogs to enjoy it. That's why there's no cuts in it. A dog could look at it like a fish tank and watch things move across the string." And that was something I hadn't noticed before. The show never has alternate camera angles, and only moves save maybe 1 or 2 times, where it's either picked up or knocked over. Apparently, this was also due to the time constraints on filming the show. Zellers noted that most crews would film 1 to 2 seconds of animation a day, which was a lot, but they had to film 2 to 3 minutes a week. So having to animate as few things as possible all at once was done as a time-saving mechanism, more so than a creative decision. The other defining characteristic of the show is the remote. When something goes haywire, Prometheus will take out his remote and click it, which simulates what would be the camera shutting off, and when he clicks it again, the camera turns back on. It's a transitory device that makes for good comedy, allowing there to be perceived time in between where the characters would set up their next attempt at whatever they were doing, and they sometimes end up in compromising positions. Frankly, it's a genius way to cut out unnecessary animations and make the most of their short runtime by being able to put in as many jokes as possible. And as for the episodes themselves, they're hilarious. Normally it takes a show a few episodes or even a full season to find its footing, but this isn't the case with Prometheus and Bob. From the get-go, the writing is extremely strong and manages to be consistent over its 4-season run. Assuredly, a contributing factor was being able to focus on its central cast by keeping it small. Only occasionally would another character enter the fray, be it a robot or a prehistoric creature, my favorite side character being the Overlord, Prometheus' boss who catches him at the most compromising times. It's a small group you can count on your fingers, but they all get a major thumbs up from me. Normally when I watch a series, I give my picks for my favorite episodes that best reflect what the show is about. This time, I get to do something I haven't gotten the chance to do before. In addition to my favorite episodes, I also get to share creator Cody Zeller's favorite episodes. So here we go, starting with mine, my first being Breakfast, Season 2, Episode 10. Prometheus and Bob try to steal an egg from a bird's nest to try and make some breakfast. Laundry, Season 3, Episode 10. Prometheus tries to teach Bob how to do laundry in a hot spring. The two end up relaxing in the spring when the Overlord comes and catches Prometheus slacking off on the job. Next, we have Cody's picks, beginning with Bed, Season 3, Episode 6. Prometheus tries to teach Bob how to sleep in a bed. Pets, Season 4, Episode 9, where Prometheus introduces a pet to Bob, much to the chagrin of the jealous monkey. And the last pick was the only episode both Cody and I agreed on being one of the top ones, that being Boxing, Season 1, Episode 4. Prometheus attempts to teach Bob how to box, but Bob's compassion gets in the way. Now, of course, those are just our personal favorites, but I could honestly see any episode being considered superior by someone else. And when there's debate among varying episodes of which one is the best, that's the mark of a great show. In most instances, the show sometimes may not connect with audience and the network will shut it down. In this one though, it worked the other way. There seemed to be fans of the show, albeit small but fervent, but Nickelodeon apparently didn't like the viewer base the show had. Zellers believes, quote, it had a cult following, which they didn't like so much at Nickelodeon. It was a little too fringy for them, and it still is, especially now. The producers had a vested monetary interest in Action League Now, so that was pretty much the one they pushed above all else. They kept me in the dark about quite a bit. I didn't even get my fan mail until the end of the second season. End quote. This looked to be the beginning of the end for the Alien and Caveman. Their final episode, Evolution Chamber, was supposed to be a 2-part episode, but the second part never aired, and the original final episode entitled Painting, well, there's a reason it's never been released, and it's incredibly surprising. According to Zellers, quote, the final episode, Painting, has never aired, because there was going to be a Prometheus and Bob movie, and they wanted to hold it back as a short to be shown before the film. End quote. That's right, a Prometheus and Bob movie was in the works. Not an animated movie, however, a live-action movie, directed by Amy Heckerling, who had directed Clueless and Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and starring Saturday Night Live alum David Spade and Chris Farley. And as bizarre as the thought of this tornado of cartoon and people coming together seems, the more I think about it, the more I could see it happening. Would it be a big hit? We'll never know. But I wouldn't be the slightest bit upset if that movie existed today. Unfortunately, Farley passed away a few months prior to anything serious coming together, and any attempts after that eventually petered out. Prometheus and Bob is an anomaly, a show that visually and content-wise shot for the moon and not only landed there, but crashed directly into that man made of cheese. Perhaps had it not been a segment in a compilation show, it may have gotten more respect. But honestly, I see this as a series that should have been in an animation festival and should be considered among stop motion's very best. To me, the duo stands alongside other famous silent pairings such as Tom and Jerry and Coyote and Roadrunner, holding their own against the silent pair of violent legends. And as far as seeing the return of Prometheus and Bob, Zeller says, quote, "Every once in a while, I call Nickelodeon and ask them, when are we going to do a modern Prometheus and Bob for the next generation? One person told me it will never be made. Everyone else seems to just humor me. So I don't know." End quote. As far as Cody Zeller, he continues to work out his creative side, making art of all kinds, including computer and oil paintings, his picture of the Jersey Devil being my personal favorite. On his website, he has the original Season 4 models of Prometheus, Bob, and the monkey for sale. So if you're inclined to own a piece of Kablam history, reach out to him there. Ultimately, I believe Prometheus and Bob will eventually get the accolades it deserves. And although these protagonists may be silent, their body of work speaks for itself. And I'm more than satisfied to have been able to view these top secret tapes.